The dog had been sitting on Walter Bennett's porch for nearly 4 hours when the rain began. Walter opened the door only far enough to slide out a bowl of water. But before he could close it again, the dog rested one muddy paw across the threshold. Walter stared at him, then for the first time that day, he whispered one word. No. If gentle stories about loneliness, kindness and unexpected companionship mean something to you, stay with me. And consider subscribing for more stories like this. Walter Bennett was 74 years old. For most of his life no one would have described him as a quiet man. He had worked as a carpenter. He knew nearly every family on his street. He told long stories at neighborhood dinners, and according to his late wife Helen, Walter had an opinion about almost everything. But after Helen passed away, something inside him slowly became quiet. Walter still answered the door. He still nodded to neighbors. He still said a few polite words when necessary, but real conversation had become difficult. Not because Walter had lost the ability to speak. He simply had very little he wanted to say. People reminded him of Helen. The grocery store reminded him of Helen. Sunday mornings reminded him of Helen. Even the empty chair beside the living room window reminded him of the woman who had sat there every afternoon with a cup of tea. So Walter began keeping to himself. At first, neighbors invited him to dinner, then to birthdays, then for coffee. Walter politely declined every time. Eventually, the invitations became less frequent. Nobody was angry with him. They simply assumed Walter preferred being alone, and perhaps, for a while, Walter believed that too. His days settled into a careful routine. He woke early, he made coffee, he swept the porch. Twice a week, he walked to the small market. In the afternoons, he repaired old household objects at a workbench in his garage, a loose cabinet hinge, a cracked wooden box, a chair with one uneven leg. Walter liked things that could be fixed with simple tools. People were harder, grief was harder. At night, he ate alone at the kitchen table, then he checked the doors, turned off the lights and went to bed. The next morning, he did it all again. Then, one Tuesday afternoon the dog appeared. Walter first noticed him near the hedge. He was a medium-sized brown dog with a white patch on his chest. There was no collar around his neck. His fur was wet from the light rain. Walter assumed he belonged to someone nearby, so he ignored him. An hour later, the dog was sitting beside the porch. Walter opened the door. Go home. The dog tilted his head. Walter pointed toward the street. Go on. The dog stayed exactly where he was. Walter closed the door. 20 minutes later, curiosity got the better of him. He looked through the curtain. The dog was still there. Walter returned to the kitchen. He found an old plastic bowl, filled it with water, and placed it outside. The dog drank, then he sat down again. Walter shook his head. You've had your water. The dog looked up at him. Walter went back inside. By early evening, the rain was falling harder. Walter checked the porch again. The dog had moved beneath the small overhang beside the door. His fur was damp, his tail rested close to his body. Walter sighed. He found an old towel, then another. He placed them inside a cardboard box and carried it outside. You can stay until the rain stops. The dog stepped into the box. Walter went inside. 5 minutes later he heard scratching at the door. He opened it. The dog had left the box. Now he was sitting directly against the door. Walter stared at him. You are a very difficult animal. The dog's tail moved once. Walter almost smiled. Almost. The rain continued after dark. Walter found some simple food that was safe for a dog, and placed a small portion outside. The stray ate slowly. Walter remained in the doorway. The dog's right paw looked muddy and slightly tender, but he could still stand and walk normally. Walter did not try to examine it. Instead, he placed another dry towel beside the door. You should belong to somebody, Walter said. The dog looked up. Someone is probably looking for you. The dog took 2 steps forward. Walter took 1 step backward. No. The dog stopped. Walter looked toward the wet street, then back at the animal, and suddenly, a memory came to him. Years earlier, Helen had brought home a small bird with an injured wing. Walter had complained about it for 2 days. Helen had ignored every complaint. When the bird finally recovered and flew away, Walter had been the one who stood longest by the window watching it disappear. He could almost hear Helen laughing at him. Walter swallowed, then he opened the door a little wider. One night. The dog walked inside. Walter pointed toward the mat. Stay there. The dog circled twice and lay down. Walter walked toward the kitchen. A few seconds later, he heard soft footsteps behind him. He turned around, the dog stopped. Walter pointed back toward the mat, the dog sat, Walter frowned. The dog waited. Finally, Walter sighed. Fine. That word sounded strange inside the quiet house. Walter had grown used to hearing only the radio, the kettle and the old clock in the hallway. Now there were footsteps, breathing, and the soft sound of a tail tapping against the floor. Walter sat at the kitchen table, the dog lay beneath it. Walter looked down at him. What am I supposed to call you? The dog's ears lifted. Walter thought for a moment. Then he remembered a name Helen had once suggested for a dog they never adopted. Sam. The dog's tail thumped against the floor. Walter stared at him. Don't encourage me. The tail thumped again, and Walter laughed, not loudly, not for long, but it was a real laugh. The next morning, Walter took the dog to a local animal clinic. He asked whether anyone had reported him missing. No owner had been found. The staff checked the dog and cleaned his paw. It appeared to be a minor irritation. Walter agreed to keep him temporarily while people in the area were asked if they recognized him. Temporarily, Walter repeated. Sam sat beside his shoe. The first few days changed Walter's routine in small ways. He began opening the back door every morning. Sam waited beside him while he made coffee. Walter started taking short walks around the block. At first he chose early mornings when the streets were quiet. Then, one morning, his neighbor Grace Miller saw him. Well, Walter, she called, who's your friend? Walter almost gave his usual nod and continued walking, but Sam stopped. Grace crouched a few feet away. Hello there. Sam wagged his tail. Walter cleared his throat. His name is Sam. Grace looked up. It was only a simple sentence, but Walter had not stopped to talk with her in months. Sam, Grace repeated. That's a good name. Walter nodded. He chose it. Grace laughed. Walter continued walking. The next morning he saw Grace again. This time, Walter said good morning first. A week later he began sitting on the porch in the afternoons. Sam slept near his feet. People walking past started stopping more often. Children asked if they could pet the dog. Walter always looked at Sam first, as though the dog might give permission himself. Some conversations lasted 30 seconds. Others lasted 5 minutes. Walter never became exactly the man he had been before Helen died. That was not the point. He still had quiet days. He still missed her. Some mornings, an old phrase or the sight of Helen's gardening gloves in the shed could make the house feel painfully empty again. Sam did not erase any of that. He simply stayed nearby. 2 weeks after the dog arrived, Walter received a phone call. Someone thought they recognized Sam from a photograph on a community notice. Walter felt his stomach tighten. He told himself this was good news. If Sam had a family, he should go home. But the caller had been mistaken. Walter hung up the phone. Sam was sitting beside the kitchen table. Walter looked at him. You're still here. Sam wagged his tail. Walter sat down. I suppose you planned this. Sam placed his head on Walter's knee. Walter rested one hand gently on his neck. A month passed. No owner came forward. Walter had followed the proper local steps to look for Sam's family. Eventually, he was told he could officially adopt him. Walter signed the papers. When he returned home, Grace was outside trimming flowers beside her walkway. Well? She asked. Walter looked down at Sam. He's staying. Grace smiled. I thought he already was. Walter smiled too. That evening, Walter cooked dinner. He sat at the kitchen table and ate slowly. Sam rested beside his chair. When Walter finished, he carried his cup outside and sat on the porch. The sky was turning orange. Across the street, Grace waved. Walter waved back. Then he looked down at Sam. You know something? Sam lifted his head. Walter paused. For years he had avoided conversation because every conversation seemed to remind him of what he had lost. Now he understood something different. Silence could protect a person for a while. But silence could also become a wall. Sam had not knocked that wall down. He had simply found one small opening, and waited beside it. Sometimes companionship does not arrive with answers. Sometimes it simply sits beside us long enough to make the world feel reachable again. If this story resonated with you, comment the word friend below, and if an animal, a neighbor, a friend, or even a stranger once helped you through a lonely season, share that memory in the comments. Your story may be exactly what someone else needs to hear today.